'Tis a time before time. Once 7 nations shared the Achaean continent with the kingdom of Saint Achaea at their center. Now, however, the gods of war and madness have descended upon this land, and the country of Derhua, led by Medius, the Dragon of Darkness, has colluded with Garnef, ruler and supreme priest of the Khadin, to destroy the central kingdom. Their victory was swift and terrible. Having reduced the once mighty capital of Achaea to rubble and ash, the Derhuan forces swept forward like a wave of steel. Now even the kingdom of Arisha, inheritors of the strength and the will of Henri the Great, has fallen at the feet of the army of night. A golden age of peace has been swallowed by the demons of darkness, and now Medius, Garnef, and Death rule half the world.
Ah, Fire Emblem, one of Nintendo's few underappreciated franchises in my eyes. An RPG series that is simple to learn but harsh on perfectionists that want to keep all their party members alive to see the story through to the end. Starting out as a turn-based tactical role-playing game on the Famicom, which to those not in the know is the Japanese name for the Nintendo Entertainment System, that only saw a release in Japan back in 1990, while everyone else in the West lived in ignorance of its existence, until Smash Bros. Melee changed all that with Martha & Roy's debut that brought the series to light, which got everyone curious to who they were and where they came from. Once I learned of them, I began to seek out the games that I could get my hands on, and just like that, I instantly fell in love with it, not only with its tactical gameplay, but also with its many different stories and characters that laid in each game. Fire Emblem took the Final Fantasy approach to where the world and characters involved in the story were always different, save for a couple here and there, but that's a second slice of cheesecake we can't dig into until another time. Playing these games has amazed me that Nintendo, in all their games that became instant classics that pioneered innovation, kept Fire Emblem, the very first home console tactical RPG, nestled in the protective embrace of their home country, not wanting to take a chance with sending out anything Fire Emblem related outside of its country. That is until Fire Emblem on the Game Boy Advance came out between 2003-2004. So it really surprised me that until Martha and Roy introduced the world to Fire Emblem, no one knew of this Nintendo franchise, and there was really no other video game or media to clue us in on this now loved series. Or was there? Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to the first ever exposure of Fire Emblem to the masses. Fire Emblem the OVA, which was released in 1996 in Japan and the year after in North America, beating the Smash Bros. Melee debut by 4 years. Animated by the now defunct studio Fantasia, with production help from KSS Inc., it was a 2-episode OVA that was released on a single VHS tape. Yes, those old things that everyone on the internet keeps mentioning to you young'uns these days. It was based on the third Fire Emblem game in the series, Monsho no Nazo, which translates to Mystery of the Emblem, released for the Super Famicom, Japanese Super Nintendo, 2 years before the OVA, and if we want to get more detailed, this game was a remake of the first Famicom title, Fire Emblem Ankoku Ryu to Hikari no Tsurugi, which in English translation is Shadow Dragon and Blade of Light, though with an added second campaign to play through that continued the story. Okay, enough background babbling, let's get into the story this anime covers. The plot in this one is that the kingdom of Altair is invaded by the kingdom of Derhua, led by Garnef, decimating the entire kingdom. With nowhere else to run, our main protagonist Mars, along with his sister Ellis and Jagan, find themselves trapped. Left no choice, Ellis teleports Mars and Jagan away so that they can survive, leaving her to her unknown fate. After hiding in the country of Talis for 2 years, it's up to Mars and what little of the Altinian Knights he has left to decide what to do and begin their journey to fight against Derhua to get back their country and bring back peace to all of the continent of Achaea. Well, technically that was the main goal of what the characters set out to do, but due to the fact these 2 episodes covered only 3 parts of the game's story, its only antagonists consisted of bandits, and the only times we got to see Garnef and the soldiers of Derhua were in the first episode, in both the opening sequence and a short flashback scene. So you would think with an anime that only lasts 2 episodes, it would have failed to leave any sort of impression due to it being short and only covering essentially the beginning of the story. But despite all that, Fire Emblem's OVA accomplishes a lot with the little runtime it had, and it used that 25 minutes per episode wisely. What I mean by that is that not only did the OVA faithfully retell the story as told from the game, but it also chose what parts of the story to focus on and what parts needed only a brief summary to make the overall viewing experience enjoyable and not drag on. Keeping it short and sweet, but it also added extra details and fleshed out the narrative for both the story and certain characters involved. For example, the video game gave you a small blurb about what happened and then throws you into the first battle. But in the anime, they took the time to actually show you the aftermath of Mars leaving his home country, hiding out in the country of Talis, and showed the emotions he was going through, having to deal with the dire situation that has befallen his family and country. This, along with other scenes, made the anime that much more interesting to watch. Another thing that was interesting was seeing all the characters that appeared. Sure, some of them got less focus than others, and one character was omitted, but that's to be expected. The ones that took center stage mostly were Mars and his childhood friend Shida. The anime built upon what was known in the games, but also gave us more insight into their bond through scenes that were original to the anime. Watching how they react to one another and treat each other made their bond feel genuine in these scenes, and I seriously believe that these two have spent a lot of time together. That's not to say though that they were the only characters the anime concentrated all its time on, as other characters also got some flashback scene or a meaningful moment that built upon their character. Naval being a great example, who, may I add, is a certified badass to boot. The only downside I can scrounge up from this OVA has to be that certain characters didn't offer anything to the plot or have anything going for them, which is to be expected with such a huge cast of characters, but it's kinda left me wishing to know more about them, especially Doga, who got the least number of lines from what I can remember. However, that is just a nitpick and doesn't necessarily detract from it, yet it's best to keep in mind that it's probably better this way so the anime could flow naturally and keep its focus, but take from it what you will. Though there is one other thing I can think of. In this anime adaptation, the characters from what I could tell had no liberties taken when dealing in their backstories and personalities, but out of everyone, Shida really baffled me. While I still stand by that her and Mars' scenes were the strongest moments in the anime, yet for some reason I couldn't help but question whether this Shida was the same one I knew from the game. I mean, sure, she is nice and cheerful in both the game and anime, but there were instances where she lost her temper due to Mars daydreaming, or she got easily jealous that it made me start to question, is this really the Shida I knew? I know it's been a few years since I played the Nintendo DS remake of Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, but I can't really recall ever seeing streaks of anger or jealousy when considering the game's interpretation. Whether it's because I missed something or I am being forgetful is another matter, but right now I can't help but wonder if these 2 extra bits of her personality were added to add a bit more to her character. On the technical side of things, the animation looked pretty good. Sure, there was really no wow factor to it, but it certainly did the job in my books. Especially all the battle scenes that were awesome with lots of fluid motions and finely animated swordplay that just sucked me into the battles. While voice acting from both the original Japanese and English dub were equally well acted. The actors portrayed the characters well, and I can be hard pressed to recommend one over the other. Though I will say that while Spike Spencer did a wonderful job as Mars and suits his appearance, the Japanese voice actor just beats him in delivery of his lines. Speaking of which, take a listen to the Japanese voice actor for Mars and tell me if he sounds familiar.
なんだてめえらマリティア騎士団ガルダを解放するんだ
That's right, this was Hikaru Morikawa's first time playing as the Prince of Altea, and he would go on to reprise his role as this character throughout the Super Smash Bros. Series. Just an interesting thing to note, even though it's very common practice in Japan's voice acting industry to get the same voice actor if possible to do the role of the character they have been casted as in any media the character appears in. Also, while I said the English dub was good in acting, there was one voice actor I just found a tad grating.
I hit it! Doga, did you see that shot?
You're still too slow.
What did you say? I hit it on the mark!
1 time out of 20. Keep practicing.
You big lug! I hit that black spot in the middle!
Oh Gordon, it's voice actors like yours that makes me wish all your spoken dialogue was replaced with slow appearing text. So all in all, on a technical standpoint, it felt like Fire Emblem, especially with its soundtrack that played during it sounded like what you would expect from the games, with its sweeping scores. With so many upsides, I can't fault the anime on any technicals at the time of its creation. I have to say though, the first time I watched this was back in college over 10 years ago, and I wasn't really that impressed with it. But coming back to it and watching it, I found a lot of things to appreciate about this anime. Mainly how the OVA treated the source material with respect, but also executed it in a way that you can just jump into this short series with no knowledge of the games whatsoever, making it very open for non-Fire Emblem fans. Also, you may have noticed in this review that I have been calling Marth Mars. Well, the reason for that is at the time, Nintendo didn't officially translate this anime, and it was left in the hands of ADV Films, that translated Marth as Mars, taking the sound of how characters call Marth in the Japanese version literally as Mars. There are other characters and countries mistranslated, but quite frankly, due to many releases of this particular Fire Emblem over the years, that Japan, Europe and the US all say and spell them differently. With it being a retelling of the story, small parts of it were changed here and there, but I didn't feel the changes and details made it any worse, and some of it made certain scenes all the more stronger from both a narrative and character development standpoint. Though it's still a shame that the anime was so short that I, like many others, wished more episodes were made. But you know what, from what we got, it was a pretty dang good watch for what it was. Heck, I don't even care if anyone thinks this was an advertisement for the game in question. Its execution was admirable, and was not anyway sloppy in the least. So if you're a fan of Fire Emblem, an obscure anime collector, or curious about this franchise, then I don't see any reason not to give this a recommendation for you guys to track down and give it a watch. All the things that made Fire Emblem good are all here, and a faithful retelling that easily stands on its own without relying upon the game. It was just a shame that not many knew of its existence till now, otherwise, if this anime took off in the US, who knew how things would have been for the franchise? But I guess that's how the rich tea biscuits crumble. But in the end, all that matters if an anime leaves you happy with what you got. Just like Marth, or in this case Mars, it matters not how small the odds of things turning out good are, as long as there is heart put into it, it can still overcome all odds against small expectations. Attack! I should have thought this through!